This episode is sponsored by Warby Parker, a new concept in eyewear. Head to warbyparker.com/RFR to order your free home try-ons today. warbyparker.com/RFR.
Need a good night's sleep? Casper can help. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/RFR. Use promo code RFR. That's casper.com/RFR.
Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio,
your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary
with Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
I don't know where you all thought we went or where we were going to go, but after all the panicked emails and Facebook posts, guys, where are you? I need my Rebel Force Radio. What happened? Where are you guys? Well, we're right here. We're right here. We did say we were going to take a couple weeks off. A couple weeks turned into 3. But it's summer. And we are enjoying the warm weather. We got to take it while we can here in the Midwest. I mean, we only get like 2.5 months of decent weather. But we're so glad to be back here at Rebel Force Radio. No. We haven't gone anywhere. We are here and we are back where we belong, coming right through your speakers, your headphones, whatever it may be, for this week's show, Friday, August 3rd, 2018. Oh, yes, and we've got lots of news to cover. Now, we didn't go away purposely just so we could accumulate a whole bunch of news. We had no idea so much news was going to break, including the return of the Clone Wars. We've got Episode 9 rolling in front of cameras right now. They announced the cast officially, which is kind of an interesting move, and the details include our beloved and late princess, Carrie Fisher, officially joining the cast of Episode 9. As I say, this week's show, Rebel Force Radio, August 3rd, 2018. So glad to be with you. And I'll tell you, someone I'm glad to be with right now is my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yes, we are back, and we are back from vacation. And sometimes you have to keep slapping yourself and go, I'm not on vacation anymore. But no, I like to hold on to the vacation for as long as I can. And we did hold on to the vacation one extra additional week this month. But hey, that's okay. A little extended break is good for you. It helped recharge the batteries, helped get me all pumped up and excited for all the upcoming Star Wars we have on coming in front of us here. We got big news coming out of San Diego Comic-Con, as Jason alluded to. And then, of course, that crazy Star Wars Resistance is still sort of flying under the radar a little bit as we're anticipating a fall launch for that series. And Ep 9, it's happening. And it sounds like this is going to be the end of it for the Skywalker saga. That's the first time I think we've ever really had any kind of indication that it really was all coming to an end here at Episode 9. But it's going in front of cameras this week. So there's a lot of good Star Wars vibes out there. And so I think it's great to be back behind the microphones here at Rebel Force Radio Central as we get ramped up for so much Star Wars. And big news broke while we were gone. We can't anticipate that sort of thing happening.
No, we have no idea. Though I like to think that it happens by design. They like to see that when Rebel Force Radio is taking a break, and they're like, now, release all the news right now before Rebel Force Radio gets it. But we're here, and we're going to be talking about it. And there is no escape. There is no escape. And as a matter of fact, let's catch up. As I said, we've been hearing from you. Believe me, we've seen the emails. I don't know where you think we went. But anyway, here's Casey from Indiana. He's got something to say. Take it away, Casey.
Hey guys, this is Casey from Indiana. I've got a new theory. I'm willing to put money on it. So, big news. Last week, they've announced, first of all, Carrie Fisher is going to be in episode 9. Holy shit. Holy beep, sorry. And Mark Hamill. Now, why would JJ allow that news to be released? I mean, we know how insanely secretive JJ is. Why? Because everyone is going to assume that Luke is going to come back as a ghost. The real surprise is that he's going to be resurrected. This is going to be another whoa, holy crap moment in Force lore where, and I know you guys have talked about this before, the theory is that every time there's a Force ghost, they are more corporeal, they're more there in reality. Yoda in The Last Jedi manifests lightning. He's barely glowing. He's got a blue, fringe around him. Otherwise, he is there. Luke is going to be there in reality, and not as a ghost. He's going to be there in the flesh, resurrected, back, and he's going to kick some butt, like we wanted to see him do in Last Jedi. Now, I loved Last Jedi. I loved everything Rian Johnson did, although I'm a little bit sad that we never got to see Luke kick some butt, and this is when it's going to happen. All right, that's it. May the Force be with you.
All right.
Well, thank you, Casey. We appreciate that. So the press release goes out. It's got Carrie Fisher in it. It's got Mark Hamill in it. And, he raises an interesting question. This is J.J. Abrams. This is the guy that is known for being very, very secretive. Why would they put Mark Hamill's name out there in the most early of early press announcements? Well, my theory is that they know that they've got a hill to climb in terms of reestablishing some trust and some goodwill with a large portion of the fan community that was disappointed that Luke Skywalker was taken out of play. Jim, my theory is this pretty simple. It's JJ putting it out there saying, all right, everybody just relax, chill out. You haven't seen the last of Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill. He's coming back. Yeah. Now just everybody behave.
Yeah, when Luke faded away into nothingness, leaving his cloak behind at the end of The Last Jedi, it never occurred to me to get angry about that. And I still am not angry about it because the sequel trilogy is only 66% finished. We have not heard a whole third of the story, potentially even more than a third. See what the running time is for this film. But it left me kind of hanging there, and I felt like it would be too much of a spoiler, too much of a reveal to announce that Mark Hamill is going to be appearing in Episode 9. But I think putting his name into the initial press release is being done methodically to help the fraction of the fan base who's really pissed off that Luke Skywalker was killed off in Episode 8, to sort of give them maybe a momentary pause, say, hold on, we still have to hear another third of this trilogy. So maybe it's not appropriate to jump to conclusions about where they're heading with the character of Luke. On the other side of the coin, he could show up in one scene, just like Yoda did in Episode 8. One and done, in and out, he's gone. And he'll just lay down some wisdom.
Yeah.
So we could see that happening. But to go back to what Casey was saying about noticing these Force spirits become more and more physical with each appearance they make as far as the films unfold. The first time we were made aware of Force spirits in the chronology is in Episode 2, when Yoda is meditating and he hears the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn yelling for Anakin to stop as Anakin is mowing down Tuskens at that very moment.
Anakin, no!
Anakin! Anakin!
No! That no always sounded a little weird to me.
No!
The Anakin definitely is Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Anakin. And then it goes into that no, and it's sort of like something you'd hear on the Muppet Show more than in a Star Wars film. I was like, no! You know?
I was thinking it would sound more like the when you get the little 45s that you can read along with this story in your book, and those where they kind of like really bad sound-alikes. I never really thought that was Liam Neeson. I didn't really buy that.
Yeah, that didn't sound like Liam to me at all.
No,
not the no part. But regardless, it's still that moment when a Star Wars character was made aware of the fact that Jedi or Force users can communicate with the living from beyond death, Yeah,
and Yoda looks very surprised.
Yeah. But they don't that's so downplayed in the movie.
Really
it's
is.
like you're like Yoda looks so surprised. I think his ears go up like a centimeter. Well, maybe like his brow sort of furrows slightly. And then but Mace Windu rolls in too cuz he gets it, Mace Windu doesn't have he's not hearing Qui-Gon's voice or anything like that, but he notices a tremor in the Force coming from Master Yoda. So he just walks right. Doesn't even ring the doorbell, doesn't knock, just rolls right in.
Yeah, during meditation time.
And then the way that Sam Jackson sort of like strides around that little ottoman before he sits down try doing that move at home. It's not as easy as it appears.
No, it's very smooth.
Yeah, you have to have a certain level of coolness to be able to pull that off. And Sam Jackson definitely has. So he just kind of rolls in there. He just sits there cross-legged on the thing. He's, what is it? Because he knows. He knows that, like, he doesn't know what Yoda is hearing, but he knows something is freaking Yoda out, and it's causing a tremor in the Force that only a master like Mace Windu, who just happened to be walking by at that very moment, It's not like if they cut away to a scene in the hallway, you'd see him. He like has his ear up against the door. What's he doing in there? But no, they don't show that because they don't want you to think that Mace Windu is a stalker like that.
Right, Skywalker's in pain, terrible pain.
Yeah, but nothing.
That's
says
my
nothing.
F2 Yoda, by the way.
I think I heard Qui-Gon.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He doesn't say anything about that.
No. And to me, that is, I think that's a bit of a symptom of the way that George constructs these movies. He's often talked about himself as a painter who sort of paints and edits in layers, and he may have had Yoda reacting, as far as the animation is concerned, to something else, but then decided later in editing that was going to be Qui-Gon's voice. So sometimes these things don't always necessarily match up, I think, just because of the way that George tends to layer these things up. So you never know. That animated reaction that Yoda has, Jim, that you're talking about, that underplays that moment, might have been for a different moment altogether.
Right. And but so he needs to think about it, though. Because even Yoda's like doubting it. He's like, well, I am like almost 900 years. It wouldn't be uncommon for a guy my age to like start hearing some voices and stuff.
Yeah, maybe he's got the dwindles. Like you say about Grandma. Grandma's starting to get the dwindles.
Is that what they say about Grandma?
You never heard that expression?
I never heard the dwindles.
Well, that was before you had, like diagnoses of, things like dementia and Alzheimer's and all that. You used to say, well, Grandma's just getting a little silly. So maybe that's what they were thinking about Yoda.
So Yoda has to step back for a second.
Yeah,
and he has to go, well, wait a second. I am taking this new blood pressure medicine that they said could offer some weird thoughts and stuff. So I have to just be cool about that.
Yeah, what's his medicine cabinet look like at 900 years old? Jeez.
It's like a vault, He has to take a golf cart in there just to get what he needs. So it's epic. But so that's the first time, though, that any Star Wars character is made aware of the fact that there's potential to communicate with dead Force users.
Chronologically, we're talking here.
Yeah, right. And I'm not talking about video games like the Old Republic and stuff. I know they have their own sort of mythology there. That doesn't cross. I'm talking specific film canon. And so then the next time you have any indication of that is when, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, when Yoda says, hey, I figured out those aren't just voices in my head caused by the new blood pressure medicine I'm taking, but it's actually Qui-Gon freaking Jinn. Do you believe it? I'm going to give you something to do for the next 20 years when you're living out in the desert with no electricity or any plumbing or anything. You maybe you have a bantha as a pet or something, but so you'll be able to talk to Qui-Gon. He'll help you kill some time. And then by the time you get to episode 4, then Obi-Wan is able to replicate what Qui-Gon was doing and actually have a conversation. Well, a one-sided conversation.
Yeah.
But then at 5, you're seeing Obi-Wan. And he's just blue and wispy at first on the ice plains of Hoth as he's communicating with Luke. And they're able to do a back and forth.
Yeah.
So now they're actually able to converse. So Obi-Wan, he's got it. He's got it down now. Then the next time you see him, he looks more and more physically there at Empire Strikes Back before Luke takes off. He's standing there. He's not hovering. He's standing.
And clearly conversing. There's a back and forth between him and Yoda and him and Luke.
Right. So he's just one of the boys. Yeah. And then by Return of the Jedi, he appears to Luke on Dagobah. He's walking. You can hear him rustling around as he walks. He sits on a log, and he clearly is more physically present. Now, I don't know if this is just a result of special effects doing whatever was appropriate for that situation practically. But if we can weave it into the mythology in such a way that shows an actual progression, because after Ep 6, you go Ep 7, you don't have any blue glowies or anything there. But Ep 8, Yoda shows up, and he's practically there. He's summoning physical lightning. He's smacking Luke on the head. He's doing all this stuff.
Yep.
So,
and he doesn't even need Whoopi Goldberg to do it. He's able to do it himself.
What's that a reference to?
A Ghost. Come on, Whoopi Goldberg.
All right, I never saw Ghost. I never saw Ghost.
You never saw Ghost?
No, I never saw Ghost.
Well, Patrick Swayze has to go inside Whoopi's body. So then Whoopi and Demi Moore have this kind of weird moment because, before Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore were a thing, Patrick Swayze's now dead. He's a ghost. He has to go into... All right, forget it.
This was the late 80s when that movie came out. I was not going to the theater as often as I was going to keggers. All right, so but, hey, back to movie talk.
Yeah.
And ghosts that have nothing to do with Whoopi Goldberg.
But interact in the movie Ghost. Okay, I'll just throw this out. In the movie Ghost, Patrick Swayze, the ghost, has to learn from, I forget the name of the actor, great character actor, looks like Larry Fine from the Three Stooges, only less attractive. But he has to learn from that guy. He has to learn from Ugly Larry how to interact with the physical world. I mean, it takes practice and concentration and focus and learning. And you got Yoda rapping Luke on the head with the cane. And you're absolutely right. You compare that, you contrast that with how we started out with the disembodied voice that was actually a replay of something that Qui-Gon had said before, Anakin, all the way then to Episode 8, where not only is it conversing, it's actually interacting on a physical level. Huge evolution in terms of manifestation of being and holding on to your being after you pass on through the Force.
I like it. I get your connection there. And
I
didn't mean to be like dismissive of you bringing up Ghost. I never saw it. And
it's okay.
I'm trying to figure out who this
scene. The Everly Brothers.
The Singers?
Oh, well, no, I'm sorry. Everly Brothers, that was Dirty Dancing. This would have been, what's the song when Patrick Swayze's behind Demi Moore and they're making the clay pot?
I'm familiar. It's an iconic moment in film history, but
it is.
I cannot comment on it. I'm trying to figure out who the Larry Fine actor is. I imagine you're talking about the dude who played Mr. Vargas in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but that's just a guess. That was just a wild guess.
I will.
Remember Mr. Vargas? What was that guy's name?
Right. You'll know the guy because there's only one, that looks like this guy. But he's this creepy ghost character in the movie Ghost.
He's the ghost. I think it's an actor named Phil Leeds.
That could be. That could be.
Definitely not Mr. Vargas from Fast Times.
The crazy Larry hair, with the bald on top and the. All right. Anyway,
so now
Ghost cast coming next week.
But the ghosts in Star Wars actually becoming more and more physically present as the episodes unfold. I don't know if we can just attribute that to some special effects decisions that are being made, or if this actually is part of the narrative that will eventually promote a character to fully physically return from the afterlife and exist among the living as if he never left.
But imagine episode 4 when Luke is in the cockpit of the X-Wing and he's hearing Ben's voice. Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke. All that. But in any other movie of that time, you might see like kind of a floating face, of Obi-Wan Kenobi, of Alec Guinness there.
Right.
I mean, George chose not to have that, right? So is George trying to say that that's only appearing in Luke's, that's only Luke's mind, Luke's head? That's where that voice is coming from. I think that's true. I think that's true. It would be a great question to ask George. I would love to ask George if that was intentional, though. Exactly what you're pointing out, Jim. That progression of how Force ghosts, quote unquote, are handled. But I'm with you. I think the question is valid to say, well, here's a movie that was made in 2016, 2017, Force Awakens, and was that just a function of having more capabilities in terms of special effects, etc., or was it really continuing this progression, this evolution of how Luke is interpreting and receiving these Jedi spirits? I'd love to think that it's by design. I really do.
Yeah.
I hate to think that it's a happy accident.
No, I don't. Well, we'll have to wait. Yeah, that would be a great question to ask George, though. I'm actually I'm going to email him.
All right, could you get it?
Yeah,
George Lucas. Yeah,
it's not. That's not his. That's not the one he looks at. You have to know his. It's Modesto1138 at Yahoo, and
he would have a Yahoo address.
Yeah,
I would think Yahoo or AOL. I've got mail.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
I'm going to send this to him now.
All right.
And we're also part of a Facebook group too.
All right.
It's I'm not going to say what. It's a private group.
Yeah.
So I can't. He'd be pissed if I talked about it. But okay, so we'll find out from George exactly where he stands on all that. Maybe.
But it's a great question, Casey.
Those are great questions.
It's a fabulous question. Thank you for the voicemail. It certainly got us off and running here this week. But before we continue, we do want to take a moment and turn your attention to a very good cause, and that is the benefit for Bo.
Yes. Oh, okay. So this is some heartbreaking news that we've received recently here at Rebel Force Radio Central. And whenever we hear about a friend in need, we want to help that person out. And, fans, Star Wars might be familiar with the name Bo Glaser. Everyone knows Bo from Chris Mock's Star Wars fan reality show, Real Fans of the Saga. And Bo is a cool guy. He's a Chicagoan, and I know Bo pretty well. His dad actually lives in my neighborhood. And unfortunately, we got terrible news. Bo has been diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and he's currently getting radiation treatments, chemotherapy, and then he's gonna have a really tough surgery in September. And I was talking to Bo about it recently, and he's being pretty stoic about it. He really wants to get it over with, I think, more than anything at this point. And so he's being really brave about having to go onto the operating room table, and that's going to happen in September. Again, if you're familiar with Chris Mock's fan reality show, Real Fans of the Saga, you know Bo. I mean, he's a character. As a matter of fact, we have an audio clip of Bo from Real Fans of the Saga. This is from the very first episode where we get introduced to Mr. and Mrs. Glaser.
My name is Bo Glaser. I was born in 1970. I am a painter and an artist and a musician. But
Renaissance man.
Mostly painting people's kitchens, pays the bills more than the music always has.
We got married in October of 2013, and we had an entire photo booth full of Star Wars gear.
And costumes.
And costumes and props. So it was a big part of our wedding.
My first experience with Star Wars is 1977, right when it came out. One of the most fun things I remember when I was a kid. I'm still a fan today for probably quite a few different reasons. When Nikki was pregnant and we were going to have a kid, it really just brought back being a kid. And the first thing that came back was Star Wars.
Yeah. Rediscovering Star Wars through having children of your own. That's a special moment. Right. Bo is a special guy. And, yeah, they have a young family. And we just want to rally together and help support Bo. That's what one of the great benefits of having this sort of there's a lot of downside to social media and having all this access to each other at all times, but there's also great benefits, and crowdfunding is one of those great benefits, especially when you can rally around a good cause, a good person, and that's what we want to do here with Bo.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, all these treatments, it's taken its toll on Bo. It's affected his ability to work and provide for Nikki and his family. So this is a great Star Wars dad and someone who shares the wars with his youngsters, and anything you could do would be greatly appreciated. Visit GoFundMe.com, and there's a page set up for Bo. Help Bo kick cancer's ass. And so go and do that right now. We'll be making a donation on behalf of Rebel Force Radio and our amazing RFR Patreon community. And so we recommend you do the same. GoFundMe.com. And do a search, Help Bo Kick Cancer's Ass. And also, if you're in the Chicago area, there's a benefit that's going to be happening for Bo at Ballydoyle in Downers Grove on 5157 Main Street there in downtown Downers Grove. It's a fantastic venue, and there's going to be a big benefit going on for Bo Glaser Sunday, August 12th from noon to 5 p.m., Food, fun, raffles, art auctions, silent auctions, and if I know Ballydoyle, there's going to be some live music there too. So thank you to everyone who is helping out with this event, and anyone in the area, please go on out there and come hang with me. I'll be there Sunday, August 12th, noon to 5 p.m., cancer benefit for Bo Glaser. We want Bo to kick cancer's ass. And anything you can do to help a real fan of the saga would be greatly appreciated. Visit GoFundMe.com/Help Bo Kick Cancer's Ass.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Where does the time go, Jim? All of a sudden, episode 9, it seems like just yesterday, we had the big announcement that there was going to be a brand new Star Wars trilogy, and already cameras rolling on episode 9. The end of the sequel trilogy is upon us. Not just the end of the sequel trilogy, but as you alluded to at the beginning of the program, we're starting to hear this phrase, end of the Skywalker saga.
Ooh, yes. They're making it official here. This is they're throwing down with kind of talk like that. And we'll hear it in the press release here in just a second as we review it. But something the press release does say, verbatim.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. No, I have it. Oh, I had to find it. Okay. It was J.J. Abrams. He said, J.J. Abrams said, finding a truly satisfying conclusion to the Skywalker saga without her, meaning Carrie Fisher, eluded us. So, conclusion, Skywalker saga. But I mean, it makes sense as far as we know. She and Kylo Ren, a.k.a. Ben Solo, are the only two remaining members of that family, the Skywalker family. That's it. It comes down to Leia, and it comes down to Kylo. So, so we think. So we think. Of course, we're hoping for a big comeback from Luke. No doubt about it.
Yep. Yeah. Part of this press release does number the cast members and name them all that are going to be coming back. Of course, Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Lupita Nyong'o, Domhnall Gleeson, Kelly Marie Tran, Jonas Suotomo, and Billy Lord, along with some newcomers here, Naomi Aki, Richard Grant, and Carrie Russell. By the way, a lot of people tell me my wife is a dead ringer for Carrie Russell, especially back in the Felicity days. They'll be joined by, of course, Star Wars veteran actors Mark Hamill, Anthony Daniels, and Billy D. Williams, who will reprise his role as Lando Calrissian. So that is a full deck and a very, very talented cast. We've got sort of, the best of the old, the best of the new. What would you expect for the
I'll tell you what,
finale of this saga?
There is a major character from Return of the Jedi who has been completely ignored in all of this sequel trilogy, and it's a character who would be totally coming of age at this time. Sure, we've had Akbar, we've had Nine Numb, we've had their returns, but there is another really a leading character from an alien species who's been completely ignored by the sequel trilogy. I'm talking about Wicket, the Ewok. How come they haven't brought back Wicket? He would be an adult by now. And he could easily lead some sort of ground force battle against...
where are the Ewoks?
Where are the Ewoks? Why are the Ewoks being completely forgotten? Just leave them behind,
Well, I look, as we've said, one of the criticisms that we've had here on Rebel Force Radio, and there haven't been a lot of them, of the sequel trilogy, is this almost what feels like a conscious overlooking of the classic alien species of the original trilogy, and even the prequel trilogy. No Ewoks, no hammerheads, right?
Well, in this new era,
you don't see any Nemoidians. You don't see there are no Ugnaughts,
nothing.
No Jawa,
not even the Rhodians. Which were
no Rhodians.
They were rampant, and then also
we do see a Rhodian in Solo, right?
Okay, we do. Yes,
there was a pink Rhodian in Solo. By the way, is the plural of Jawa Jawas, or is it sort of like deer, where you don't have an S? It's just Jawa.
That's a good question, because I believe
Jedi.
I always look at Kenner to see how they merchandise the original stuff. And it was referred to as the Jawa Sandcrawler. Not the Jawa Sandcrawler, the Jawa Sandcrawler.
So Jawa is like a deer.
How does Luke say it, though? When he says, he refers to them in plural as Jawas. Doesn't
Jawas,
he?
Okay.
When they come across the Sandcrawler that was blasted by Imperial troops.
Yeah, the Jawas. Okay. All right, so maybe they do add the S. But it sort of goes both ways with Jedi. You hear even very well learned members of the Star Wars fan community saying Jedi. Some of them say Jedis. I believe Kyle Newman, our pal Kyle Newman, says Jedis. Yeah, he adds the S there. Yeah.
I tend to say Jedi. And I do not want to jump to conclusions about that Jawa thing I just threw out there because I'm trying to replay that scene in my mind when Obi-Wan and the droids and Luke come across that Jawa sandcrawler that's been blasted and they're led to believe it was
Well, I'll tell you, he says, but why would Imperial troops want to slaughter Jawas? He does say Jawas, plural, with the S.
But that would sound weird if he just said Jawa. Why would they want to slaughter Jawa? Well, I guess it wouldn't sound weird. So, yeah, we know now.
See, I'm so glad that it's a mystery to you, too. Now, I know there are people screaming at their speakers, it's Jawas!
Yeah. We have to work it out ourselves, so leave us alone.
Yeah.
This is a very complex process we're going through right now.
Oh, but hey, how did we get here? But we were talking about, throughout the sequel trilogy, there has been... and I don't. When I say conscious, I don't want to say that there's. It's not like this is some sort of crusade. But how do you not incorporate some of these classic creatures as you're assembling this incredibly diverse mix of characters in these three films? It just seems like they've gone out of their way to ignore them.
Yeah. Sprinkle them throughout just to give us that foundation that we need. Because if we don't have that, then all of a sudden it's an episode of Babylon 5. So we need something, just to keep it real as far as
forehead of the week.
Hey, I get it, man. If somebody said your job is to create the creatures for the next Star Wars film, well, I would let my imagination run wild and my creativity take over and do exactly what these guys are doing. But I do think that it requires, for authenticity's sake, to have those creatures, some of them that we met in that Mos Eisley Cantina, have their species represented in each and every Star Wars film. And, true, Empire Strikes Back didn't have any of that quality. You had, literally no alien species in that film. Certainly none that were repeated from the original Star Wars film. None. Unless you count Bosk. Bosk was sort of based on a mask used in the Mos Eisley Cantina by a much shorter little guy. He's called a Saurin. They called him a Saurin in the Mos Eisley Cantina, but then he's a Trandoshan when he's as tall as 6 feet or however tall Bosk is. They made him into a whole different creature, I think. I believe that's the same mask. But then
no kidding, really. So the Bosk mask, okay.
Yeah, that's something I've always assumed because they sure look alike.
We need to ask Tom that. We got next time if we have Tom on again, we got to ask him.
Good call. I've been meaning to get a hold of Tom. He's a great guy. But you don't see that repetition from Ep 4 to Ep 5. But then in Ep 6, Lucas gets it right because he introduces so many great, instantly iconic exotic creatures to the Star Wars galaxy. But you have that foundation because as you look around Jabba's palace, you'll see there's some Jawa sitting over there. And notice I said Jawa. I did not put the S on the end.
Yeah.
There's a couple of Jawa sitting over there. Oh, I
say
like
it both ways.
Dude, no, I like it.
Both ways.
I know, I like it.
Jawa?
I like
Jawa,
plural.
Singular and plural. Okay.
Yes. I'm rolling with that from now on. There's a couple of Jawa sitting over there. Oh, does that feel good? Okay. But also in Jabba's palace, you'll start seeing, you'll see some familiar. I believe Bosk is there, isn't he? Doesn't Bosk hang out in Jabba's cantina or Jabba's in his throne room? You also,
I don't think we see Bosk in Jabba. Do we see Bosk in Jabba's
I know we
palace?
see Dengar in there.
Yeah, Dengar's hanging out. Boba is hanging out. But apparently Boba beats the hell out of IG-88 on the way to Jabba's palace with Han Solo and Carbonite. I think that was tackled in Shadows of the Empire, right? Didn't they have a little? Didn't Boba take out IG-88?
Yeah, Shadows. There's
Shadows. Yeah.
I think the comic book version of that features the Boba Fett versus IG-88.
He takes him out. I don't know what happened to Forlom and Zuckuss. I think they're sort of the bottom of the class there of that bounty hunter group.
There is an Ugnaught in Jabba's palace.
Really?
Yes, he wears red.
No,
yes.
Really?
Yes.
All right, I know what I'm doing tonight.
watching the Jabba's palace sequence.
Yeah,
but so there's a little.
You got to understand that you got to understand though, Jim. For me, as a 6-year-old seeing Return of the Jedi in the theater, that was my cantina. Jabba's palace. That is still one of my all-time favorite sequences in all of Star Wars because that blew my mind. Blew my mind.
I love these tangents we're going on this show. It's great. But the thing that I remember the most was no one had ever seen Jabba before May 1983. No one had ever seen, because they weren't putting him in magazines or anything like that prior to the film being released. So when you saw Jabba the night you went to see the movie, this was the first time you were ever seeing Jabba, or a Hutt for that matter. And when he shows up on the screen there, and he's like, whoa, there was a visible gasp in the movie theaters I went to in 1983, May 83. When I sat there, people were like, oh, what? It was like, it was crazy. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. But again, actually, when you look at it, it is kind of minimal, the amount of cantina aliens that you actually see in Jabba's palace. You do see a Greedo, his brother Beto. Right. He's there. And some Jawa, but you don't necessarily see like hammerheads there or guys like that.
But that's okay. I mean, we're not expecting it to be an exact replica. But as you said, just the interspersing of those made it feel like a cohesive universe. So Beto puts the Max Rebo band into the context of the Star Wars universe.
And then, of course, with the special edition, you have a Rhodian sax player. You have a Bith up there, which is really now starting to bridge the gap. But by the time George made Episode 1 and he got to Mos Espa, then he had it down right, because he had Walrus Men there, he had Hammerheads, he had Snaggletooth, he had them all there, along with the newer creatures like Sebulba and all those crazy pod racers and stuff. Even with the old pod racers, he threw in a Reese, a Grand. He threw one in there.
That's right.
So, I mean, there was obviously all of this acknowledgement to the saga on a whole in trying to make it all feel as cohesive as possible. So, long story short, I would like to see Wicket the Ewok in Episode 9. Is that too much to ask? That's how we got on this. So. That's how we got on this whole tangent to begin with. But let's get back to focusing on Episode 9 a little bit. A lot of people are talking about Richard E. Grant. He was in the Logan film, and he's a Game of Thrones guy. And a lot of people are saying this guy could be a good candidate to be Grand Admiral Thrawn if they were going in that direction. Now, my personal feelings are they are not going to go in that direction. And I think Richard, while he does kind of have some similarities to Thrawn as far as like facial features and what have you, he kind of I don't feel is a little too old for me to be. Well, I guess Thrawn would be that age. It would be an older Thrawn. So it's possible. But I don't think they're going to bring in a Grand Admiral. I think the attention is going to be more toward tying the prequel and the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy all together, tie it all together. So to bring in characters from the expanded universe or the animated universe, what have you, I think that's adding too much into the mix.
I agree. When I looked at Richard E. Grant, I had to look him up because I wasn't familiar with him. I haven't watched Game of Thrones yet. I haven't completely ruled it out. Because it seems like every movie now has a character, an actor from Game of Thrones. But I looked at Richard E. Grant and I thought, well, it's kind of a very, almost a Tarkin kind of look about him. I can definitely see him being a first order, person up very high up in the hierarchy, somebody of some esteem. I could definitely see that. But remember when we heard about Lor Santeca. We thought that this Max von Sydow. We thought, well, this is an actor of very high esteem. He must be playing someone important, and we found out, right? Mm-hmm. Well, important for the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, and we don't know. We can't put it into perspective, like where his place is in all this, how his importance came into play in all of this. I hope that's something that's revealed in episode 9, even just with a piece of throwaway dialogue, That's why we had to give it to Laura Santek or something, just something. Give us something. Hey, also, as you look, you don't see Max von Sydow at all in this. I wasn't expecting to see him in the cast. But there is a name notably absent I thought we would see in this casting announcement, and that is Benicio del Toro. Now, maybe they want to save that as a surprise. Who knows? Maybe Benicio will redeem himself somehow, some way. Or maybe he'll just be forgotten about altogether. You never know. But I thought for sure he'd kind of come into play here somehow in episode 9.
Yeah, I thought so too. But I don't think that he's a character that frankly resonated enough with fans and with moviegoers to where it's like, we got to keep that a secret.
I know.
The big reveal is that he might be showing up, but that could, who knows? I mean, that could be something that they release in a few months. Oh, by the way, we know that Benicio had a lot of enthusiasm and passion for the project and really enjoyed the character and put a lot into it.
Giggity. Oh, wait, no, that's the Family Guy.
Yeah, right.
No, but I thought that would be funny, though, if, they're under heavy attack. Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, they're flying the Falcon. They're under heavy attack, and then all of a sudden, just like when the Falcon saved Luke during the trench run on the Death Star, like, all of a sudden, another ship will fire onto the First Order, and then they hear over the speaker, in the cockpit. It's like, giggity, and it's like, it's Benicio del Toro again. Wait, that's not his name. What is his name? It's DJ. We think.
DJ.
Hey, look, it's
DJ.
Yeah. But no, it's not going to happen. I don't. Like you, I don't think he resonated. I'm a big Benicio del Toro fan. I always have been, and I was expecting a little more from an actor of his credentials and capability for Star Wars. I was.
I don't know. I think he milked it for everything, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think Benicio sucked every little drop of nectar from that role. But, he couldn't move beyond what was on the page, what was written for him.
Maybe I was just expecting a more dynamic character or a more deadly character. When I think about the roles I've seen Benicio in films like Traffic and Sicario, I think of just like a real deadly presence on screen. Even when he showed up as he was 20 and he was in that Bond film. The Timothy Dalton.
Oh yeah.
License to Kill.
License to Kill. Yeah.
Even then, there was a presence about him where it's like, this is a dangerous dude, and while he was really cunning and sly and really kind of a slick talker in The Last Jedi, at the end of the day, he never felt dangerous to me. I was like,
No, he didn't. But I don't know that. There's a lot of the role that he had to fill. I think he filled very well, and I think that he was definitely. I mean, Benicio is that kind of actor where he's going to reach inside and try to create something very memorable. And I don't want to say he's a method actor, but more along those lines of that type of I guess a real actor's actor, and so he found this affectation to his voice, this stutter, and it worked. But to me, that was really a symbol of him trying to make the character more than what was on the page that was given to him. He wanted to make it memorable. He wanted to make it different. He wanted to stand out. I think he did that. By the way, Richard E. Grant, apparently his official Twitter account, liked a tweet that was speculating that he was going to be Thrawn in Episode 9. So, of course, there's all kinds of buzz. Oh, yeah. He liked the tweet, folks. That's it. That's confirmation.
That's confirmation.
Yep.
That sums up his entire essence as a human being. He clicked like on a tweet. Oh my God! Judge, I present you this evidence. Yes. I have a tweet that was liked.
Well, and Carrie Russell. Now, I don't believe she's liked any tweets speculating that she's going to be Mara Jade, but that is pretty much the rumor du jour when it comes to Carrie Russell's casting in episode 9. They believe that is going to be Mara Jade.
No.
And
again, using the same sort of logic that I'm using considering the addition of Thrawn this late in the game, I think would be ill-conceived because you're trying to tie up 9 films. And so to introduce characters that have already established histories in Star Wars, be it literature, be it animated television, what have you, I just think that it's putting too much into the pot. You can't mix it all up with all of the other loose ends that need to be tied up. I don't think it'd be fair to take attention away from any of these other cast members' characters that have already been announced. I mean, to give newcomers Naomi Ackie, Richard E. Grant, and Carrie Russell really big, meaty roles, I think it's a long shot at this point.
Well, I don't know. My speculation on Carrie Russell, when I heard that she was cast, I said, well, she's clearly Rey's mother.
Okay, yes. Now, that's totally acceptable. Maybe Richard is the father.
Maybe.
Maybe we're going to actually meet these drunks. They should have had, Foster Brooks and, Courtney Love, maybe. Dudley Moore. I'm thinking of all the great film drunks of all time. I don't know if Courtney Love necessarily applies, but she is an actress. She does acting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
She would be great as Rey's mom. Not, but yeah. I think that's some solid speculation there about Carrie Russell. I don't see a Mara Jade introduction into the Skywalker saga. I just don't see it happen. It's fun to think about it, but I don't.
But why would you do it? Why would you do it after, presumably here, the death of Luke Skywalker? I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, if Mara Jade in the cinematic universe is going to play a similar role to what she played in the expanded universe, they're an item. They end up getting married. I believe they end up having a child together, right? Isn't there a kid in there?
Yes,
there a kid?
Ben. Yeah. Ben Skywalker, yes.
Ben Skywalker. There you go.
Right.
So anyway, lots of speculation, but one thing that is not speculation, it is absolute fact, according to Twitter, is that filming did commence on Episode 9. J.J. Abrams himself tweeted, "Bittersweet starting this next chapter without Carrie, but thanks to an extraordinary cast and crew, we are ready to go. Grateful for @Ryan Johnson, and special thanks to George Lucas for creating this incredible world and beginning a story of which we are lucky to be a part. #9 in Roman numerals." So interesting that JJ, his first tweet, Jim, right out of the gate upon rolling cameras on Episode 9 is about Carrie Fisher. And Carrie Fisher is named amongst the returning cast members. This flies squarely in the face of what we had heard back in April of 2017, just a few months after Carrie's passing. Lucasfilm president herself, Kathleen Kennedy, said that under no circumstances was Carrie Fisher going to be in Episode 9. This despite the fact that her brother Todd Fisher had claimed in the press that he and Billie Lourd, Carrie's daughter, had signed over the agreement to allow footage that was previously recorded of Carrie to be used in episode 9. Now, at the time, we didn't know that it was episode 7. We know if it was episode 8, whatever it was. But regardless, here was what Kathleen Kennedy had to say back in April when the rumors first started to surface that perhaps Carrie Fisher's face video footage would be used in episode 9.
Well, actually, what the story is here, now, this is even beyond April. This is from April 2017. This was at Star Wars Celebration.
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy sat down and talked to ABC News' Paula Ferris about the potential of seeing Carrie Fisher continue as Princess Leia via technology or what have you. And this is after, as you said, her brother Todd had gone to the press and said Carrie will be in episode 9. So this is Kathleen Kennedy, well over a year ago, responding to questions from ABC News.
Todd Fisher has said that his sister, that Carrie, will be a part of episode 9. In what capacity are we using pre-shot footage?
You know, there's probably he was probably confused because we finished everything in 8. And Carrie is absolutely phenomenal in the movie. And we're so happy that we were able to complete shooting in the summer. Unfortunately, Carrie passed away. So by the time we were well underway with episode 9 in our thoughts, we had not written the script yet. But we've regrouped. We started over again in January. So sadly, Carrie will not be in 9.
So, but we'll see her.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of her in 8, which is great.
Well, apparently Todd Fisher was not so confused, and I believe his first confirmation about Carrie being sort of frozen in time here for episode 9 was in a Rolling Stone article back in 2017, where he said that they had assigned over the rights to Lucasfilm to use Carrie in upcoming films. Not so crazy. So, turns out, according to Variety, that, Todd Fisher was right. He says, I couldn't be more personally thrilled and happy that our Carrie will reprise her role as Princess Leia in the new and final Star Wars Episode 9 using previously unreleased footage of her shot for Star Wars The Force Awakens. So you have JJ at the time of the press release talking about their inability to find a satisfying end to the Skywalker saga without using Princess Leia. And of course it's difficult, impossible even, to find a satisfying conclusion, because what they've done is they've kind of painted themselves into a corner. You've lost Han, you've now lost Luke, and you are putting all of your eggs in the Princess Leia basket. And unfortunately, Carrie Fisher passed away, and there you are. And we had heard repeatedly that Episode 7 was Han's movie, Episode 8 was Luke's movie, Episode 9 was going to be Leia's film, and that didn't pan out. So you got JJ out there, I think, who was brought on board to sort of mend some fences, so to speak, and create some goodwill in Star Wars fandom, help create or help bring the fans back together. Thought, well, why not? We got to get Carrie in there. We've got to address this loss in some way. And why do it off screen? We can do it on screen. Jim, what's curious to me about all of this is, well, two things. One, why Kathleen Kennedy was so quick back in 2017 to discount Todd Fisher's statement about having signed over the rights, he and Billy Lord, to Carrie's likeness to be used in Episode 9. Why was she so quick to discount that? And secondly, why they would go back and use footage from Episode 7 as opposed to maybe something left on the cutting room floor for Episode 8, which would put us potentially, chronologically, more in tune with Episode 9. So why the footage from Ep 7, and why was Kathleen Kennedy so apt to discount Carrie's brother?
All right, I have a few thoughts on all of this. Number one, the thing I want to point out is that the clip we played of Kathleen Kennedy, who was saying she thought that Todd Fisher was confused, I think she firmly believed that Todd was talking about episode 9, or no, episode 8. And it just, because this is prior to episode 8 being released. And so
yes.
I think Kathleen was approaching that as thinking, well, Todd's being confused. He didn't mean episode 9. He means episode 8. And obviously we have enough Carrie shot from last summer that we could complete the whole film without having to resort to any sort of CGI trickery or anything like that. So that's why I think she said he was confused. Now, the other thing is that sort of puts a perspective on that statement from Kathleen is that when she made that statement, Colin Trevorrow was still on board to direct episode 9. That didn't blow up until late summer 2017. The statement we heard from Kathleen Kennedy was made when Colin Trevorrow was still the director. And I think the direction of episode 9 was going into a vastly different direction at that point. But now, as far as this footage they have of Carrie that they're going to be able to resuscitate and create something new out of it, I think it has a lot to do with Maz Kanata getting access to Luke's lightsaber. How did she get possession of that lightsaber? We saw in the original trailer for episode 7 that was originally screened at Star Wars Celebration in April 2015. There was a shot of what was clearly Maz Kanata's hand passing off the saber to Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia, because it's the same ring she has on her finger.
Yep.
So I think that may be explained somehow via flashback as to how, because that has to be answered. How did Maz Kanata end up with Luke's saber? That has to be answered. Now, here's something I want to throw at you that's completely from left field. Nobody's talked about it. It could only come from my mind. What if, throughout the process of creating The Force Awakens, because we know that went through a lot of crazy edits, last-minute edits, too, I might add, in 2015, before the film was released. There was a lot that changed after the film was shot via the editing room. There's no question about it. There's a lot of evidence out there pointing at that direction. What if there was a sequence shot where Princess Leia dies in episode 7, but they scrapped it? They just said, no. We have to keep Leia around. You never know. There could have been some revisions going on. This is real, like stuff that nobody knows about.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that general architecture of the 7, 8, and 9 being Han, Luke, Leia films specifically, I think that predates any of this. I don't think there was any scenario.
All right. I am led to believe that as well. But I'm just throwing out what-if things. Like, what does J.J. Abrams have at the Bad Robot Film Vault? What does he have?
I think that it's. I think that you're referencing that cut scene of Maz Kanata's wrinkly brown ET-like hand handing the lightsaber over to Leia. That's a good one, because I was trying to think, well, what is out there? I mean, we saw her with her, as she called it, her baboon-ass hair when she's wearing the blue dress, and we saw her in her kind of more military-style vest and, General Leia outfit. And I'm thinking, well, how is that going to fit into Episode 9? And honestly, I wasn't considering that this could be a flashback. It's going to have to be a flashback. We've got rumors that we'll get into here in just a moment that there is a huge time jump from The Last Jedi into Episode 9, and that is because of the need to rework the General Leia stuff that had already been planned out.
Right.
So it does make sense that could be a flashback. That would also give them, I think, more flexibility in terms of that cutting room floor footage to use. But they've certainly ruled out recasting. They've ruled out any kind of CG. So essentially, this is writing around. Wasn't it? I don't want to be crude about this, but wasn't it? Didn't they do a series or several episodes of the Three Stooges after Shemp had passed away? And well, now hear me out. Yeah, okay,
right.
They did this. They did this with John Candy too, in John Candy's last movie. And he was with the guy from Friends. Which one? The Chandler. He was with Chandler from Friends. They're in this movie. John Candy passes away on the set of this film, and they kind of get another dude to sort of shoot from behind. They can double as John Candy. They did this. They called it the Dead Shemp. And there's actually episodes of the Three Stooges or Three Stooges shorts where they kind of cut around existing footage of Shemp. And then utilize this dead Shemp. I don't mean it the way it sounds, but I mean, is that what JJ's doing? Is he literally cutting around and building a story, constructing a story around Leia? A passed away Carrie Fisher.
Yeah,
is that what's going on?
Yes,
or.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, he's taken what he's got, and he looked at it, and he said, we can do this, we can do that. And then I think there's going to be some ILM trickery going on here. It's going to be like when Ma Soprano passed away before season 2, and they had to, use existing footage of her and shot fresh footage around it.
There you go.
And, like I said, with the advancements and all of the computer-generated magic that ILM can do. I mean, almost anything is possible. But unfortunately, like you said, this final tribute to Carrie Fisher might feature her with her most hated hairstyle, that baboon ass.
Baboon ass.
Oh, poor Carrie. But you know what? They could even change that, I mean, it's quite possible. They could even, use Carrie and completely, sure, they're not recreating her via CGI, but I think there will be CGI elements that will be required to be used in this resurrection of hers.
Baboon ass.
Oh, thanks, Carrie.
Baboon ass.
See?
Baboon ass.
There she is. I'm channeling Carrie Fisher right now as we're reading this press release, and all I'm hearing is
baboon ass.
There we go. I love when we can work together that way.
So there you go. Now, the other thing, though, is, and Jim, you're probably right. I mean, I don't know that there's anything nefarious here or underhanded.
No, of course not.
In terms of Kathleen Kennedy discounting Todd, but it was, I'll be honest, it was a little bit on the condescending side. He must be confused.
Yeah, a little bit.
By this. But at the same time, I think, based on the facts that we have, based on the fact that you had another writer, you had another director slotted into episode 9, based on the information that she had at the time, she may have truly believed that Todd Fisher was confused. However, that doesn't mean that she was privy to every little machination going on behind the scenes, and it would make sense. After the passing of Carrie Fisher, there was probably a lot of red tape, a lot of we know it was one of the largest settlements in insurance history, where Disney got paid because of her untimely passing.
Yeah,
paid out. There probably were various things in papers that Todd Fisher and Billy Lord had to sign away. There might have been a contingency. Hey, whether it be Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, doesn't matter. If you pass away within the time of the making of these films, all the footage that is on the cutting room floor or in the film belongs to us. So when Todd signed whatever agreements and Billy Lord signed whatever agreements, it may not have been specifically about episode 9 per se, but there might have been some sort of blanket agreement that was signed at the time of her passing that would allow them to go in there and mine any unused footage. So it could have been something more general, and Todd just back in April jumped to the conclusion that meant that she was going to be in episode 9. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's no way he could have known back in April because, like I said, J.J. Abrams wasn't attached to the project.
Right. And he's out there crediting J.J. for bringing Carrie Fisher back.
Exactly. I mean, there you go. There you go. I mean, so to look back at that audio of Kathleen saying Todd's confused, I mean, the circumstances were totally different back then. And the playing field has changed considerably since J.J. Abrams was brought on board.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was an attempt here by people in the press to sort of create some sort of rift. You know, oh, Kathleen Kennedy negates Todd Fisher's statements, blah, blah, blah. I don't think there was any real, this wasn't about trying to cut him down to size or anything like that. I mean, she probably could have chosen her words a little bit more carefully. But at any rate, I don't think there was any ill will here. But it is interesting. We will get Carrie Fisher, or at least clips of Carrie Fisher, back in episode 9. We've got Mark Hamill confirmed. We have Billy D. Williams confirmed. What else do we have in episode 9? Well, we just turned the page here to an article written. Where was this from? I didn't write it down, and it didn't print out. This is from...
Let me just point out, no Andy Serkis in episode 9 either.
Ah, good call. Of course. Who are we not seeing in episode 9?
Snoke is dead. But, I think a lot of people are looking for some sort of resolution to his story or some sort of setup to his story or everything in between.
Yeah.
I mean, so set up resolution and everything in between. A little more about Snoke, but I think that'll probably be dealt with, some exposition within the dialogue of the film itself will kind of lay all that out there for us, I think. I mean, Snoke.
I don't know. I think he's probably going to get a 4 or 5 part comic book miniseries that'll talk about him. I just think that we put more stock into his importance than anyone else did, honestly. Perhaps not J.J. Abrams, but clearly Rian Johnson had no use for any kind of a Snoke backstory. But this story from MovieWeb.com, this is Alan Orange. He's writing and commenting on a whole slate of rumors that have come into the ether from guys like Mike Zero, who is a big Star Wars YouTuber. And I'm just going to run through a few of these, Jim, throw these at you. These are rumors about Episode 9. And right off the bat, something that is probably less of a rumor, more of fact, is that J.J. Abrams is taking the crew back to Cardington Airship Sheds, that's in Bedfordshire, England, to shoot what is arguably going to be the planet Yavin 4. These sheds, they were used to construct the big Masasi, right?
Yeah, you got
it. Yeah, the big outpost there that you see in Episode 4, and also it does have a reappearance in Rogue One, but that they're going to be heading there in Episode 9. Now, why would they be heading there in the sequel trilogy? Well, to destroy it, of course. Rumors are that the film is going to open with an attack on the original Rebel base on Yavin 4 there, and that, no, it won't be the Millennium Falcon that gets blown up. It's going to be that iconic Rebel base there. And, in fact, the quote is, it will become a burnt-out husk in the galaxy's long and winding sidewalk. So that's what we'll be treated to at the beginning of Ep 9. Again, this is all speculation. So JJ taking the crew.
So they'll go back there. I thought that was the original plan for The Force Awakens. The planet Dakar and that base there, I thought was originally supposed to be Yavin. And then it was during production where they decided to make it an entirely different planet altogether. I may have read that in the Art of book. But I thought that was the original plan, was for that set to be considered Yavin. And that's why when you're in that bunker there, you see like the vines from the trees in there and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was
very Yavin-like.
Yeah.
Very Yavin-like.
Yeah. It's more jungle than it appears the car was more like a grassy plains with hills and stuff. But yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think we're going to see a return to the original Yavin base and see it destroyed by the First Order at the beginning of the film?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Why not?
Finish up the job the Empire forgot to do, I mean, let's just blow that sucker up,
Get that out of there. Well, you know what? I'd rather it be the Rebel base on Yavin 4 than would be the Millennium Falcon.
Right. I want to see the Falcon survive.
Yeah, let's see that. Yeah. Because why wouldn't you? I mean,
you have to leave some threads untied. Even if you're like, this is the end of the Skywalker saga, and all that. But to have Star Wars continue, there are still elements from the Skywalker saga you're going to have to propel forward into any story you create about Star Wars.
There's a certain level of iconography that has to be left intact.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's no longer Star Wars.
Exactly.
Obviously, you want the younger actors. Understandable, but you got to keep them in context. Here's another one. This has shown up in a couple of different places. This is a wild one. We've talked about it offline a little bit, but I'm curious your thoughts about George Lucas. That's right. They're saying that George Lucas has been brought in to consult on the script for Episode 9, despite the fact that they pretty much turned their back on him when The Force Awakens was first coming together. He is now this trilogy's Obi-Wan Kenobi, the only hope. What do you think? George Lucas coming back to consult with JJ on Ep 9?
As much as I want to say this is a total long shot, I think it would be the smartest and healthiest thing for both parties to work together on what is supposed to be the grand finale of the Skywalker saga. It would only make sense, and I think it would really be beneficial, actually, to the final film. And at least it would help fan confidence a lot. Because George has crapped all over Disney. Disney, in essence, by closing the door on George, they've crapped all over him, too. And there's been what some fans consider, as a result of the contents of Episode 8, there's been a lot of crapping all over the legacy of Star Wars, too. So what better way to fix it than to bring back the guy who started the whole thing and try to really, if you want to bring, both the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy together and have it all wrap up in the sequel trilogy in a real nice, perfect way. Having George Lucas involved in some sort of official capacity as related to the storytelling, I think would be extremely beneficial. Like I said, for both of them, because it seems like there needs to be some catharsis and some healing in that relationship. So I think it would be really smart. Plus, we've always known that there's been a level of public respect between J.J. Abrams and George Lucas. That's been palpable. I think that it's important for us to make sure that show the public it's not all smoke, that you guys can actually work together and do this thing the way you set out to do it in the first place. George intended to be involved with Star Wars. I think Kathleen Kennedy intended to have George Lucas involved in Star Wars. But I think the heat got too hot in the kitchen as they were starting to launch this thing for Episode 7. And corporate heads prevailed, so George found himself on the outside looking in. This is the only time you can fix that. And plus, it'd be beneficial for J.J. Abrams. So a little of the pressure gets lifted off of him and placed back where it belongs on George Lucas's shoulders. So if the thing turns out to be a turd of a film, they can both point the fingers at each other and say, oh, it was his fault. So everyone wins.
Yeah, right. Plausible deniability. Well, you did have a lot of competing interests. You talk about too many cooks in the kitchen. You had the bad robot guys and J.J. Abrams. You had the current crop of Lucasfilm people, Story Group plus Kathleen Kennedy. You throw in George Lucas in there. You got the Kasdan. There were a lot of people and a lot of big egos and a lot of talent working on the film. And, look, we've long speculated, and not just us, but many others have speculated, that the prequels were a four-letter word when it comes to Star Wars and Disney. They didn't want to think about the prequels. The prequels, in their minds, are not beloved. The prequels are not necessarily as widely accepted as, say, the original films. But the thing that they may not have counted on is that the nostalgia factor clearly has played a part. The prequels are now, I'm not going to go off on a limb and say that they're as widely loved and accepted as the original trilogy. Not the case at all. But I think that their approval rating, if you look at it that way, over the years has gone up. And again, you can't discount the nostalgic factor. You've got a generation of fans that grew up. That was their Star Wars, were the prequel films. And so I like the fact that this particular story is saying that 9 is going to bridge the prequel and original trilogy, those connections, that continuity. And now it does go on to mention that, well, of course, most people didn't like the prequels, blah, 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 which I've never really subscribed to that idea. I don't think it's the case that most people didn't like the prequels. But if anybody can bridge all of this, it's George Lucas. And I think a George Lucas, J.J. Abrams collaboration would be fantastic. We know from some of the episodes of the Clone Wars, and that actually did happen, some of the episodes that didn't happen, that George, doesn't always get it right. He kind of goes off in some of these crazy tangents. But I, for one, would love to see him have some sort of mark on this film. This article does say that they're not sure whether he's just happens to be hanging out there in the Cardington sheds as they're filming, or if he is dropping by in on the script writing sessions. But they do expect some sort of official word to come out about George's involvement in the film. The big time jump, Jim, that is something that we have both, you especially, have long speculated since we saw Episode 8, or rather since we heard about Carrie's passing, that there would be a big time jump between Episode 8 and 9. This article is backing that up, saying that we're going to see Finn with a whole new outfit, and his hair will be substantially longer. I'm wondering if he's going to have the old Saw Gerrera look going on. I don't know.
Or maybe he'll have the baboon ass.
Maybe he will.
Baboon ass.
Sorry, Carrie. She hates it when I bring it up. She hates that.
Yeah. So let's see. Poe's going to be getting a new flight suit. Rey's going to have a look that has never been seen before in any Star Wars film. This quote is saying that she's going to get a maxi makeover. I don't know what a maxi is.
Well, her first look was very unique. But to me, still, that look she has in The Force Awakens does kind of resemble a Jedi look a little bit to me, Oh,
you're talking about the 3 buns?
No. I'm not talking about her hair. I'm talking about her clothes.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
Right. It does. And then it looks more so Jedi in The Last Jedi. I would like to see her in like an all-black thing, like Luke wore in Return of the Jedi, just all black. And she has the one black glove to sort of, as a tribute to him. And she's just like him. I think that would be great. I was expecting to see that, the look that Luke has in Return of the Jedi, when he shows up at Jabba's palace and he's all in black. I thought that was going to be the look for the Jedi in the Clone Wars. I thought that was going to be sort of like their field uniform. But it didn't turn out to be that way. But I thought there was going to be some sort of progression. Because the very first time that Luke was dressed that way, the action figure came out and it says Luke Jedi Master. So I assumed all the Jedi dressed in all black like that. And but then it turned out it was all just derivative of the look Obi-Wan had in Episode 4. Which I always thought was weird because Uncle Owen is wearing the same stuff. So it's
that was actually making the rounds a few weeks ago. I don't know if you saw that, but a big, every once in a while you see these stories that pop up online. Massive plot holes in the Star Wars saga. Biggest plot hole discovered in Star Wars saga. And one of those in the last couple of weeks was this question about Owen's garb in Episode 4, because it does resemble what Obi-Wan is wearing. So it's like, well, is Owen wearing Jedi outfits, or do the Jedi sort of style themselves after, moisture farmers on desolate planets? I don't know, but it's a very similar look.
Well, it's just that's how Obi-Wan was able to just sort of fit in there on the planet of Tatooine. He didn't have to change a thing.
Not even his clothes?
Best place to hide out. Where am I going to go to hide out? Oh, I know. I can go to this place where everyone dresses like Jedi.
Yeah.
So that would be the desert.
Best place to hide out in plain sight.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right, so we've got a few more of these rumors. So where did you come down, Jim, on George being involved? What do you think?
I think it would be extremely smart for both parties to mend the fences and find a way to collaborate on the final episode of the Skywalker saga. I think it's a necessity at this point. I think that George Lucas's influence must be recognized. And I think that J.J. Abrams will have to work with George Lucas on this final film. This might all just be wishful thinking, because when you're dealing with hundreds of $millions on the table, it's hard to make emotional decisions like that. But when you're dealing with something like Star Wars and the name George Lucas, a guy who it's been clearly indicated to us who was ready to continue forward by providing his creativity and his intellect into the Star Wars realm, then I think it's important. Now, the thing is, the biggest hurdle here is George Lucas. Can he play well with others? After the decades of being the buck stops here kind of guy, where everyone, when George spoke, everyone stopped everything they were doing, look and listen to him, listen to him and everything like that. How does a guy like that then kind of take a step back a little bit and let go a little bit of that obsessive power and ego and try to collaborate? I mean, George has obviously shown he can collaborate with people. Steven Spielberg, Frank Marshall, Lawrence Kasdan, Rick McCallum. Ron Howard. So many different people. Francis Ford Coppola. Remember, they did Captain EO with Michael Jackson. But the level of pressure and spotlight and attention on Captain EO is nothing compared to the final episode of the Skywalker saga. I just think, for authenticity's sake, that they need to bring in George Lucas. His influence must be acknowledged for Episode 9. And I hope it works out that way. Of course, if you ask George about it, he'll say, retired. But we also know George changes his mind on a whim. So,
for sure. Yeah. For sure. Also, rounding out these rumors, Maz Kanata having a much bigger role than she had in Episode 8, which really was just essentially kind of a glorified cameo.
That was a cameo, yeah.
Yeah, but this movie is going to have Maz Kanata running around in her pirate ship. Now, this is a starship that will have huge metallic wings that look like sails on a pirate ship, and it's manned by a very diverse crew of humans, droids, and aliens, and potentially there's speculation that this is what is going to bring Lando back to the fore, that Lando is hanging out there on Maz's big pirate ship.
I love it. I love it. I mean, basically, Jabba's sail barge in space. Okay. Sign me up.
That's what I'm picturing.
That's what we want. That is exactly what we want.
And what we would expect Maz Kanata to be flying around the cosmos in. But there is also talk about connecting some of these dots from Episode 7 and Episode 8, namely, where did that Skywalker lightsaber come from? This is something that we know that was lost on Cloud City. Maz Kanata came to be in its possession. We may or may not see Maz Kanata handing it over to a Carrie Fisher in a cutscene from Episode 7 in Episode 9. But regardless, how did she become the possessor of that lightsaber? And this is where Billy D comes in, as there is speculation that story will be told, and it does revolve around Lando Calrissian, the Baron Administrator of Cloud City, and that he's the one that came back to Cloud City, found this item that sort of just showed up, I guess, by the cleaning crew. I don't know who might have found it for him, but he didn't know what it was. So who does he go to? Who does he take it to? Maz Kanata. She's been around a long time. She, in Lando's mind, might know what this is and what it's worth, et cetera, et cetera. So that might be the way that we get Billy D back into the film. He's hanging out on Maz's ship.
But how is any of that possible? I mean, Lando had to evacuate Cloud City, and Cloud City fell under Imperial rule. So at some point, if Darth Vader was thinking clearly, he'd go, well, I chopped his hand off, and the saber went down there. His hand and saber are probably down there. So send some stormtroopers down there and bring that sucker up to me right now. That's the only way that thing could have been retrieved out of Cloud City. There's no way that...
Not necessarily, because Lando could have gone back after Return of the Jedi. He didn't have to necessarily go back after Empire, right? He could have gone back after the Empire.
Yeah, like maybe an Ugnaught snagged it and stashed it away. And it was like an Ugnaught that Lando would have a cup of coffee with from time to time. So when Lando returned, he'd say, hey, wait till you see what I got. Okay.
Anything good? Yeah. I mean, once a pirate, once a scoundrel, always a scoundrel.
Well, yeah. You know, you would assume that Lando Calrissian had members of his crew infiltrating all over Cloud City, doing all sort of things. So he was probably, putting on this front of being the Baron Administrator, beloved manager or politician, however he rose to that position on Cloud City. I consider him like the mayor of Cloud City, right? I mean, that's kind of how I look at it for him. But they don't call him mayor because it's more of a business. Cloud City is more of a corporation itself, as opposed to just like a normal city like Cleveland or Chicago or New York, LA, wherever. So to live there, you are probably employed by Cloud City. So everyone who lives there all does the same things, and they mine the Tabana gas, and all of the economy is based around that. And then there's the other people on the outside of the bubble who provide for those living at Cloud City. So in addition to having people who work in the Tabana gas mines, you have people who own grocery stores that sell groceries to the people who work there, and all that kind of stuff. In entertainment, casinos, we knew there were casinos on Cloud City, and so all of that kind of was under Lando's guidance. So he brought in who he wanted to bring in. And so he had many members of his crew or his associates, working in Cloud City, probably all trying to make every deal that goes down beneficial to Lando. So that's how I always assumed Lando kind of... We never talked about the politics of Cloud City before on the show. But, when you think that way, because it's outside the Empire, it's kind of its own thing. And then, obviously the Empire takes it over then. So think about what happens to Cloud City after the Empire takes over. All of the workers there, there's probably slavery, there's probably indentured servants, and they're all now using those resources to benefit the Empire as opposed to free trade and capitalism and whatever else happened on Cloud City.
Well, didn't Chuck Wendig cover this in one of his books about Lando going back to Cloud City?
That name no longer has any meaning for me.
Well, I'm just throwing out there as a little bit of Star Wars history. I thought this was covered because I remember there being an excerpt from one of these books. It may not have been a Wendig book, but somebody wrote a book where they do detail Lando's trip back to Cloud City after the end of the Empire.
Many stories have been told, even going back to the old Marvel comics, about Lando returning to Cloud City and liberating the Ugnaughts or whatever the hell he did. But until we see it in a film, I don't consider it to be any part of it. Yeah, I mean, really, let's put this all up on the silver screen where Star Wars belongs. I'm really looking forward to the future of live-action Star Wars television to see maybe these are stories that could be told. I still have my dream about a weekly series, probably on ABC Saturday nights, The Love Boat, but Cloud City version. And so you have Lando, and he's the Captain Stubing, and you have Wurr, the bartender. He's like the Isaac, and it's a whole thing. I mean, it's a whole thing.
Oh, it'd be perfect.
If they don't do it, we are going to here on Rebel Force Radio.
Someone's going to do it.
There's a listener who said we should just do audio dramas of Cloud City Love Boat. We have our Lando in house, so that's no problem, and we could actually make something happen like that. So I'll tell you what. If somebody out there is listening to the show and you can whip up like a 3 to 5 minute script for the pilot episode of Love Boat Cloud City, featuring Billy Mack as Lando and Jason and myself as additional roles.
Well, we got to figure some of these characters are got to be. You got to have if it's going to be like Love Boat, you got to have maybe Twiggy. Got to maybe have a little Diane Carroll showing up.
Yes, we will have lots of celebrity appearances from the late 70s, early 80s. There's no question about that.
Celebrities in air quotes here.
We'll have a lot of that stuff going on. But, so we're workshopping this for fall. Yeah. For this fall, we're going to go straight up in competition against Star Wars Resistance, actually. This is going to be the new Wars. And so if you have an idea for a script or whatever, lay it on us.
Yeah, eat your heart out, Jon Favreau. You haven't seen anything yet.
Exactamundo.
We're coming after you with our Cloud City Love Boat. By the way, the clock is ticking on the show. We've got limited time left. We've got to talk about the big triumphant return of Star Wars, The Clone Wars.
Yes.
This was announced as part of the 10th anniversary panel at San Diego Comic-Con. Dave Filoni himself announcing that the hashtag Save the Clone Wars. By the way, in case anybody remembers, that was Jimmy Mack that started the Save the Clone Wars hashtag on social media, because we were hearing whispers immediately following the acquisition of Lucasfilm by Disney. We were hearing whispers, rumors of the Clone Wars being just sort of broomed off there.
Yeah.
And so, Jim, you were one of the first to really, really put the call out to fans saying, look, we've got to let Disney know. I remember you putting, I think, Bob Iger's email address out on the program.
Oh, yeah.
You really wanted people to know that it was Disney's intent to cancel the Clone Wars. As fans, we did not want that to happen. We wanted to allow Dave and the creative team behind the show the opportunity to tell the story, finish the story that they wanted to tell. And a lot of folks thought you were crazy. I remember I think they called you Chicken Little or Henny Penny. The sky is falling. Jimmy Mack thinks the Clone Wars is going to end. He's crazy. And then what happens? Save the Clone Wars. Is in full, and also Paul Bateman. Paul was putting out all kinds of images on social media, all kinds of things to support the Save the Clone Wars campaign. I say that because when it was announced at San Diego Comic-Con that the Clone Wars is saved, that's exactly the way they promoted it. Hashtag Clone Wars saved.
Yeah, that was a nice little nod to history. And I have to admit that I did feel a chill run down my spine when I saw that. I couldn't believe, because I do remember that first day when people in the know started coming at me from a lot of different directions. It'd be like, oh, that person is saying this person is saying this, and I'm like, that's enough. I've heard enough. I know that the Clone Wars is on limited time here. And it was unfortunate because we were so excited and happy about the Disney acquisition and that Star Wars was going to continue with new films. And we just thought the future was so bright at that time. And one of the very first things somebody told me, again, someone in the know, told me was that, hey, people at Disney, they do not like the prequel era stuff. They do not like the Clone Wars. Clone Wars costs way too much money, and it's way too... The foundation is in the prequels itself. They want to get away from that. People do not like that stuff there. And so expected to go away. I'm like, oh, well, no, they're not going to go forward with Clone Wars. And then I started hearing from a lot of people. So one day I sat there, I fired up the Twitter, and I just used our famous old Rebel Force Radio Twitter account, which is no longer in service, thank God. But
by the way, we look pretty smart these days. There's a lot of people deleting their accounts and deleting old tweets. Once again, Rebel Force Radio ahead of the curve.
And I do want to mention we were nominated for a Shorty Award a couple of years ago for excellence in social media. So go figure. But boy, the house burned down real fast after that. But one of the... All right, hold on, let me compose myself. One of the things that put us on the map with the Shorty Awards and excellence in social media was the fact that we were able to incorporate hashtags over the years that really built up a lot of buzz. And that day I put out that hashtag, Save the Clone Wars. That was all the tweet was. Save the Clone Wars, hashtag Save the Clone Wars. And so I got, people are like, save it from what? Save it. Now, at that time, we were noticing that no announcement was made for season 6.
Right.
Clone Wars had moved from Cartoon Network to Disney XD for that final season, and we didn't know what was going to happen after that season. It was always very publicly, these big press releases would come out saying, Clone Wars picked up for season 4, Clone Wars picked up for season 5. We didn't get that. Clone Wars picked up for season 6, even though we had been hearing for like a year and a half that season 6 was in development and scripts were being written and voices were being recorded and all of that. And so I got nervous about the future of Clone Wars just based on a lot of stuff I was hearing from behind the scenes. So I did hashtag Save the Clone Wars. And people came at me and said I was being Chicken Little, saying the sky is falling, and that I was doomsday. Somebody called me Wendy Weiner. I was like, no, you guys, listen. This is more than just lack of an announcement. The next announcement is going to announce the end of the Clone Wars. And I kept saying it over and over again, and then people started putting 2 and 2 together. I started a writing campaign.
By the way, I long for the day when the worst thing we're called is Wendy Weiner. By the way, that is those are called the good old days.
Oh, I was so stunned and shocked and hurt by that. No, I wasn't. But so I gave out a few addresses to Disney and Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy. Listeners flooded our voicemail inbox with Save the Clone Wars, please. And I compiled all those into a CD and sent them off to Lucasfilm. Never heard anything about the CD that I sent in. But after a while, they did announce that Clone Wars was going to be coming back via the Lost Missions, which they looked at as a great opportunity to take these episodes that they already had primarily completed for season 6 and put them onto Netflix to herald the arrival of the Clone Wars onto Netflix. And this is just at about the time when binge-watching series started to really become in vogue. And so when they announced that they were going to put up 12 or 14 episodes from season 6 as Lost Missions on Netflix, people were getting a hold of me and saying, why they're doing this is because of that writing campaign you guys orchestrated. And it made me feel really good to hear that from a variety of people, again, in the know. And you guys, responded. You went from saying that I was being paranoid and crazy until, everyone started to piece it together. And then when that big announcement was made, I believe it was April 2013, that Clone Wars was canceled. I mean, yeah, people were then, we had them primed and ready to write those letters, send those emails, and leave those voicemails to let the powers that be know that Clone Wars was not done in our mind. We were not finished with Clone Wars. We knew George wasn't finished with Clone Wars. We knew Filoni wasn't finished with Clone Wars. We knew the actors and crew working on that series was not finished with it. And as consumers, as an audience, as fans, we were not done with that show. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you, for our Patreon community, I'm going to put up that CD of voicemails that I sent to Lucasfilm.
There you go.
I'm gonna put that up there just so you guys might even hear yourselves. I still have that disc. Gosh, I still hope I have it. I have a hard drive that has failed me recently, and I hope it's not on there. But I'm sure I'll be able to find it. And I will put that. You'll hear all the voicemail, people pleading, please, we have to keep the show alive. This is the best animated show that's ever been on television. This makes the prequels better, was what a lot of people said. We're not done with Ahsoka. When Ahsoka came on the scene, people were like, not Ahsoka. What is this? What? But, people were not done with that character. And so here we have this announcement coming out of San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, 10th anniversary panel. You had Dave Filoni along with most of the original cast, from Ashley Eckstein to Matt Lanter, James Arnold Taylor. A lot of folks that have been on our podcast for a number of years. And they were all on stage, and it went from Save the Clone Wars to Clone Wars Saved. They played a trailer and announced that, there would be 12 new episodes of the Clone Wars to officially wrap up the series. And they will premiere as part of the brand new streaming service being offered by Disney in the fall of 2019. That trailer, by the way, absolutely went crazy viral. In fact, many folks have pointed out that trailer on YouTube is doing better than some of the film trailers of late. And at the very end, it's pretty much if you go online and you look at it, it's very much a rehash, looking back on the 6 seasons of the Clone Wars. But at the very end, you get to see the episode 3 style Anakin in that Clone Wars, style, as well as Obi-Wan Kenobi looking very episode 3, and the familiar voices of Matt Lanter and James Arnold Taylor, as well as Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka as she turns and faces her master. So check out the trailer if you haven't done it, and it certainly does kind of alter a little bit the experience you have in watching the episode of Rebels where Darth Vader confronts Ahsoka. It really does. She turns, master, and there he is looking all.
Can I ask you a question? How did you feel emotionally when you watched that trailer for Clone Wars Return?
You know what? It really did hit me. It really did hit me. I loved the fact that we were finally getting to see that mature-looking Anakin and Obi-Wan, that episode 3 look to them with those familiar voices. I've been a big fan of Matt Lanter's version of Anakin. He really did fulfill the promise that was given to us so many years ago by Alec Guinness's monologue there about the best star pilot in the galaxy, cunning warrior, good friend, all those things. That finally was fulfilled by the Anakin Skywalker of the Clone Wars. And Matt Lanter had a lot to do with that. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I just think that this is such a phenomenal happening in Star Wars. And to me, it also lends credence to, I think, some of the rumors about Dave Filoni's future within the company. I definitely think that when you combine the news that they're going to be using, or they hired back J.J. Abrams, that they're going to be using cut scenes of Carrie Fisher to get Princess Leia back in Episode 9, that Mark Hamill is out front and center as far as a cast list for Episode 9. You got the Clone Wars coming back. I think that these are a lot of very positive signs. I think that, as I've alluded to before, I think Bob Iger, opening up the basement door, flicking on the lights, and telling everybody to get the hell out of his house. I think this is part and parcel of that, and it's just so ironic in some ways that it's the Clone Wars that was at one time considered very, I wouldn't say divisive, so much as there were two types of Star Wars fans back then. There was the type who cared about the Clone Wars and liked it, and there was the type that didn't care at all and were hardly even aware that it was happening. And so to have to kind of go back to that in order to, in some ways, unify fandom, I think is a little bit of poetic justice, quite honestly.
I like what you're saying. I wish I could be more romantic about this, because what I see here is obviously respect to Dave Filoni and respect to the fans who loved the Clone Wars. But it almost seems like the way that this is being unveiled is like the Clone Wars is coming back. This is the return of the Clone Wars. When in essence, I dispute that. I see this as finishing something that was already started as far as Clone Wars Season 6 goes. We got the first half of the season via the Lost Missions release when Clone Wars hit Netflix, as I said before. But this is the second half of that same season, I believe. And I think it's just being a case of we have this content and we can complete it and use it as fresh content for our big streaming service release that's going to happen next year. Just watch. We're going to be hearing about Star Wars Detours, another little bit of content that remains on the shelf that's been unreleased. And that will be used as something to promote the new Disney streaming service. That will be something used to lure in Star Wars fans. Disney trying to use their $4.5 billion investment in the Star Wars and use it to its full potential. So they have these things that they can complete, which, provides content for them and provides content for them on a cheap price because there's already been so much work done on it to begin with. So I think it's more of a clearinghouse kind of situation here, where they're taking anything and everything they have that hasn't been seen by the public to make the streaming service seem as fresh as possible. You're going to lure in your hardcore Disney fans with that streaming app, no problem about it. But what can they do to bring in the Star Wars fans? What will they do to bring in the Marvel fans? We'll be hearing about things that have been teased for years and years, but haven't been seen by the public eye because it's just sat on a shelf. Well, they're just going to be throwing everything against the wall now so they can promote this new streaming service. They're really putting everything and the kitchen sink into that streaming service, as far as I can tell. Bob Iger is going to be making his big quarterly investors address next week, and our microphones will be there. So hopefully he'll have some things to say about Star Wars and the new Disney streaming service. I wouldn't be half surprised if we get the announcement about Star Wars Detours availability on this upcoming streaming service, if we get that very soon from Bob Iger himself. But we'll have to wait and see. But for now, that's how I'm looking at it. It's more a case of having content that's convenient and able to be used as a promotional thing for the new streaming service, as opposed to a full-on revival of the Clone Wars. Now, saying that, I do want to point out to the fact that should this Clone Wars revival be so successful that it brings in so many subscribers to that app. I could see Disney sitting back going, why did we cancel this thing? Can we still get these actors to come back? Is Dave Filoni? He still works for us? All of those things could come into play, and we could see a full-on revival of the Clone Wars. But right now, that's not the case. Clone Wars hasn't necessarily been saved, but the work that has already been done to it is being seen to completion, I think. I don't imagine we'll be seeing too much fresh stuff in here, but I think the opportunity is definitely there for Filoni to go in and tie up some loose ends and wrap up the Clone Wars on his terms, to wrap up the Clone Wars in a way that he and George Lucas may have envisioned it to wrap up all those years ago. I was pretty satisfied with the Yoda arc and the priestesses and all of that, and his deep dive into the Force and the living Force and the cosmic Force and all that. I was pretty pleased with that as a way of wrapping up the Clone Wars as a series. I thought that was pretty effective. But it definitely was not the conclusion that guys like Lucas and Filoni were envisioning. And I think that this provides a great opportunity to them to really, for at least Filoni, to put the final nail on the Clone Wars in a way which he feels the most appropriate way to wind down the series. Now, by fleshing out these formerly incomplete episodes in such a way that fashions it as a satisfying conclusion. But I don't think Disney's going to go that way. I think they're going to leave it open-ended, just in case. Just in case they do say to themselves, let's really revive this thing and make it into a living, breathing series once again. But I don't think we're there yet. I think we're just taking material that was left half completed, fleshing it out and making it whole so there's new content on the streaming app when it launches next fall.